Okay, so my experimental design project was on the effects of different color light on the growth of common bean plants. So the goal of my experiment was to find out how the growth of common bean plants is affected by the color of light. Um, in my experiment, height was measured and the height of the plants were measured and the health of the plants were assessed. The hypothesis was that the bean plants grown under violet light will be healthier and grow the tallest because of the wavelengths will be high enough and beneficial for the energy consumption of the plants. The results indicated that plants grown under violet light and natural sunlight were the shortest and healthiest of the plant groups. Bean plants grown under blue, green, and red light were significantly taller but showed greater signs of poor health and a lack of photosynthesis. Light is essential for the growth of plants, and wavelength of the light does have an impact on the growth and health of plants. Without light, plants would not be able to photosynthesize and life on Earth could not be sustained. Um, it has been shown that reduced light or quality of light that has been observed to result in an increased rate of elongation of the stem of all species during the first 2 or 3 weeks of growth, as one study indicates. And other factors that are relevant and are affected um, are plant height, leaf width, and plant maturity, as noted in another experiment. So I conducted this experiment by first locating an outdoor platform. It was a wooden platform, um, and a square section of it was designated for my experiment. It was split into four smaller square sections that contained each plant group. A black tarp was cut into pieces and used as divisions between the four sections to keep light from leaving and entering. Four colors of LED lights were used: red, green, blue, and violet. Natural sunlight was the control group, so there were 5 groups total. 60 seeds were planted in total, with 12 in each of the 5 groups. The duration of light, the amount of water, and the amount of soil were kept constant for all groups. The plants received about 9 to 10 hours of, I believe it was 9 hours of light per day. The amount of water, they were given about 1 gallon of water per week. So the height of the bean plants were measured every 24 hours over a 16-day experiment. Um, Measurements were recorded in centimeters, and the plants were measured from where the stem meets the soil to the highest part of the plant, whether it be a leaf or a stem. The results indicated that plants grown under the blue LED light had the tallest average height of the 5 groups. Green and red were the second and third tallest, respectively, um, and any extreme outliers were excluded from the average. That only happened for the red LED group, where one of the seeds never sprouted and the height was measured at 0 for the entirety of the experiment. Um, in these results, that data point was excluded to prevent the average from coming down. Plants grown under the violet light were shortest on average, and plants grown under the natural sunlight were the second shortest on average. The data indicates an inverse relationship between the average height of the plant groups and the stem and leaf health. So basically, as the height of the plants increased, the health decreased, and vice versa. Please note that on the graph, the health rating of 1 corresponds to poor, 2 corresponds to fair, and 3 means good health. So this graph indicates that the violet and natural sunlight plant groups were the healthiest. So the health of the plants and stems were also evaluated using qualitative data. The red plant group showed fair leaf health and stem health. The results for the health of the stem and leaf, they went hand in hand. So for the red group, they were both had a fair rating. Green and blue plants were both in very poor health. Leaves were discolored, curled up, slightly yellow. They weren't green, and the stems of the blue plant group were extremely elongated and thin. The violet and natural sunlight groups showed larger leaf sizes and a darker, more rich green color. The stems were also thicker, and that indicated a healthier plant. So the results of the experiment did go against the hypothesis that the plants grown under violet light would grow taller. However, the hypothesis was partially correct because the health of the plants in the violet light and the natural sunlight groups was better compared to the other groups. It's possible that plants grown under the red, blue, and green light had to expend more energy to grow taller and less energy on photosynthesizing. Since the light quality was not as good, it's entirely possible that the plants had to work harder to grow taller and towards the light because they actually weren't getting enough of that light. They weren't photosynthesizing enough, and that would explain the discoloration in the leaves, the shriveling. Some leaves were falling off, poor health in general. That would be explained by that. Plants in the violet and natural sunlight group are shorter. However, they have healthier leaves and stems because the quality of light is better. And might I add that the patterns in growth were more consistent for the violet and natural sunlight groups as well. So in conclusion, light quality is clearly important for the growth of plants because it demonstrates how plants require the right amount of light to perform photosynthesis. Without plants, life on Earth could not be sustained. The results from this experiment do not agree with the outcome of another experiment where it was observed that plants under the violet light had either completely yellow or slightly yellow leaves and were in poor health compared to the other plant groups. The differences in data could be explained by a much larger sample size in the other experiments, where there were far more plants than just 60 and 12 in each group. So the data probably could be more reliable. And lastly, I didn't use very many colors. I only used 4 different colors of light. And so the amount of experimental groups could have been larger. That would have yielded perhaps more convincing data to either support or disagree with my hypothesis. And these are my references.